What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 8 of Cricket Banter. Today we've got Gareth, we've got Kane in studio with us. Today we're going to be talking everything World Cup. We decided to bring two cricket experts on to discuss the Cricket World Cup. What's happening, guys? Welcome to the episode.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Cool. So we have just a few more days to go until the 12th edition of the Cricket World Cup. I am so excited. How are you guys feeling about the World Cup coming up?
World Cups have always been a slightly traumatic time for South Africans, I think, but super excited. I think it's nice.
I think it's probably the first in a while we don't have as high expectation as we've had in the past. So it feels actually easier going into it.
Less pressure, less sleepless nights.
Underdog tag.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to benefit us. Anyway, this is a general World Cup discussion. We're going to be talking about all the teams. We're going to be talking everything World Cup, everything that you guys need to know to be educated going into this World Cup so that you guys can make informed decisions. You know exactly what to expect, which teams, which players to look out for. We're going to be talking about the history of the World Cup, English conditions, the importance of, how does playing in England affect the teams and which teams do well in England generally. We're going to be looking at the format. We've got a really awesome format coming up. We're going to do an awesome squad analysis. We're going to analyze each squad and look at exactly which teams are the ones to look out for. So cool. To get started, let's look at what we have over here. So there's 10 teams in this World Cup, which is also interesting. I think the last World Cup there were 12 teams. I think that's the first change.
I think that's right. I think it's the first. We'll talk about the format in more detail later, but it's a brilliant format. Strength versus strength. Everyone plays everyone. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So, guys, we always start and end off each episode with some trivia. Last month's episode, we asked the question. So, most of us know that Sachin Tendulkar is the leading run scorer in World Cups of all time. But very few people actually know who the leading wicket taker in World Cups is of all time. So the question last week was, which bowler has the most wickets in the World Cup? Did you guys know the answer to that question?
Didn't know for a fact, but would have guessed the right answer, I think.
What is the right answer?
Mr. McGrath.
That is correct. Did you guys get it right? Cool. So Glenn McGrath was a World Cup beast. Okay. So not only did he have the most amount of wickets in all time of World Cup, 71. I think Murali was close in second. I can't remember how many, but McGrath was an absolute beast. Not only did he have the most wickets, he also had the best bowling figures in a World Cup. 7 for 15 against Namibia back in the 2003 World Cup. He also has the most wickets in a single tournament. 26 wickets he took in 2007. He also, just as if that wasn't enough, he also has the lowest average of any bowler in the history of World Cups, obviously with a minimum criteria of 1,000 balls being bowled. His average was 18.19, so just over 18. He was an absolute World Cup beast. So watch out, at the end of this episode, we will be asking you guys an awesome World Cup or cricket-related trivia question. While we're on the topic, before we get into the really cool stuff, the analysis, just a cool FYI, some stats that we found. The most runs in World Cups, we have Uncle Sash at number 1. We've got Ricky Ponting, also a World Cup beast. Kumar Sangakkara, and then Brian Lara. Those are the top 4 run scorers of all time. If we look at the most runs in each World Cup edition, it's interesting to see in the last World Cup there was Guptill. I didn't expect that, but I was actually at the game against West Indies when he got, I think it was 234 or something, massive double hundreds. So that's interesting. Later in this episode, we're going to be discussing who we think will be the leading run scorer in this World Cup coming up.
You'll definitely see here is that most of them tend to be openers, which I guess isn't that surprising. But
that is an interesting fact, though. Dravid, did he open or number 3?
He may have opened in that World Cup with
99 with Ganguly.
Maybe it was Sachin, I don't know.
I would have thought Sachin opened. I think Dravid and probably Crow would have been the only ones who weren't openers out of this list.
Good point. Very cool point. Okay, cool. Let's get into the history of the World Cup. So it's been fascinating. So, Kano, do you want to just talk us through the history of the World Cup? Each year, who's kind of been the dominators and what we're looking at going into 2019?
Sure. I think in the early days, it was very much the West Indians who dominated. I think that was sort of the early stages of ODI cricket. So obviously they won the first two, and I think it was the third one where they actually lost it to India. So they were on the verge of a hat trick there, and I think a lot of India's or Kapil Dev's fame is probably due purely to that leading his side there. Whereas, we could debate the merits of how good a player he was, but I think he got a lot of fame just from that win there. And what's interesting is that up until then there was no Aussies really involved, and they were sort of, as far as I recall, in absolute turmoil in the mid 80s. And then Border came along and sort of shipped them up into shape. In that 87 win, obviously we'll see later with the English, but I think they threw that one away. But there was a sort of start of the Aussie dominance, which we would soon, I guess, one looks at how many finals they've been in. But yeah, then 92 Pakistan, that was sort of my first recollection of cricket. But that was a beast of a team, that Pakistan team. I think if they were ever going to win it, it was that one. 96 Sri Lanka was I guess a big surprise, I would say.
How would you compare that to this day's teams? Like who would it be, like Bangladesh winning the World Cup?
Or? I think closer to Bangladesh winning it. They had only, I can't quite recall when they got ODI status, but it wasn't. They were still considered a relative-ish minnow. But I mean, they had some serious players like Aravinda and I guess Murali was in that team.
Murali was in that team, Jayasuriya.
But I think they did shock the Aussies that day.
They changed cricket a bit in that World Cup.
Yeah,
they
correct.
kind of introduced that hard up front.
The first 15 over, they used to go hard. It was
Kalawitharana. Jayasuriya.
So they really evolved the game.
They did, and I think like Jayasuriya probably wouldn't make an ODI all-time 11, but he certainly contributed to sort of a change in I guess, and how guys prepare.
That's the only World Cup final Australia has ever lost. Is that correct? They never actually they were never in the first few World Cups.
Right.
So they've been in 5 World Cup finals and they've won 4. Pretty good. And then it just obviously became the era of Australian dominance, which was broken by a little bit of Indian dominance, and then back to Australian dominance.
I think 2015 to me was the one year where I don't think there was mass. I don't think that you would have gone in thinking they were favourites. I can't quite recall.
I think at home they were pretty unbeatable.
I think they were still number one going in, and at home they were pretty good.
And we can chat about it just now, but I mean, they've had a bit of a fall from grace since then, but seem to be maybe peaking at the right time as usual.
They always seem to peak at the perfect time. Well, I think it would be great for world cricket if a new team, whoever it was,
let's go with a brand new team.
A brand new team, someone that's never made a final before. That would be cool. Except maybe England. Cool. So looking at World Cup history, we are going to go into this in a little bit more detail. But basically, I mean, we're going to talk about the C word, the choker tag, a little bit later. What I found interesting was there was, South Africa's got this connotation of being a choker, but if you look at the people that have lost finals, and again, we are going to go into this in a lot more detail, I'm seeing, so Australia did lose the first World Cup, I see. Okay, so they've been in 6 World Cup finals. And they've won 4. Okay, interesting. So I mean, I'm seeing England's name come up here a lot, losing the final. Sri Lanka's also a couple times. So it's just something to think about. We are going to go into a little bit more detail about that in a little bit. Just interesting, Gareth. Some cool stats on World Cup winning captains. Only 2 guys have ever won it twice.
Yeah. So Lloyd obviously won the first 2. I think in 75 he made a massive 100 in the final.
Is that in the final?
Yeah, cool. And then 79 was Verb's final, where Verb scored a massive 100 to win the match there. And then Aussie dominance, Ponting. I think he won 3 World Cups and was captain in 2 of them.
Yeah, he was there in 99, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
Has anyone else won as many or more World Cups than that off the top of your head?
You would think maybe 1 or 2 of the Aussies
McGrath
had also won 3.
McGrath was there, same as him, 99, 2003, 2007.
They all would have played 96, but they didn't win.
So like Gilchrist, I can't remember if he played in 99. I think it was still...
No, I think he did.
I'm sure he did.
He did, because I'm trying to picture that last moment. Was that I'm pretty sure it wasn't,
Okay.
Pretty sure. It wasn't Healy, so...
It wasn't Healy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So a few Aussies have won it 3 times. So just looking at the captains, it would be great to see like a Faf du Plessis there. Seeing Aaron Finch on that list just wouldn't sit right with me.
Yeah, look, obviously then you got guys like Coley and Owen Morgan in the mix as well.
Kane Williamson.
Yeah.
Jason Holder. Cool. Karuna Ratner. Okay, so let's move on to some really cool, interesting stuff. So going into this World Cup, I think that one of the big factors going into this World Cup is English conditions. There seems to be this massive misconception around the world, maybe until very recently, that English conditions are these traditional seaming, swinging, test match cricket, overcast, teams bundled out for cheap type of conditions. And I think that's not necessarily the case. Kano, do you want to talk us through, what are the English conditions actually like at the moment?
Yeah, I think you have to distinguish between Test cricket and ODI cricket. I mean, if you even watched what was the last series? India. Yeah, it was the India were in England recently.
Yes, they were.
Those pitches were tough to bat on. So it's not it's a misconception, but it's quite easy to make that error, I think, because when you see Test cricket,
I think also the tube ball moves around a lot more as well.
And in ODIs they use the
yeah. And then I think in ODIs the last 5 years, I don't know if they've done this on purpose to suit the England style, because clearly England's style of play, I think,
I suspect
has changed quite materially. They've got a top 5 that just goes all out. There's no real first, second gear. It's just fifth gear. So maybe that's the way they've prepared the pitches for that. But what you are finding is that there are just a lot more high-scoring games. If you look at, so we've got some charts there on the total sort of average runs per wicket at these English grounds over the course of ODI history versus the period after the last World Cup, and places like Southampton, Trenchbridge, the Oval. These places seeing significantly higher run fests than they have in the past. So it's becoming a lot harder for bowlers in those conditions, to get wickets. So, and I think this is the point around, having a proper attack in this World Cup, and having not just seamers that are just going to do nothing, they're going to travel. Kind of need the mystery spinners, and maybe we can chat about that a bit later. But yeah, clearly these pitches are a lot more conducive to batting, with the exception of, two, which appears to be something like Lords and Old Trafford, still seem to be quite hard or more sort of challenging places to score runs, whether that's weather or who knows what it is, or it's just the history of the pitch there. It just looks as if there hasn't been much change if you look at the history versus the last sort of 4 years. It seems to be quite a tough place to bat.
So definitely English conditions seem to be very batting friendly. Some of those averages are huge. I mean, touching 50 there at the Rose Bowl, almost there at Trent Bridge. Those are massive numbers in ODI cricket.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to see some big scores here. There's going to be some flat decks.
Yeah.
Very batsman friendly. I think in the last World Cup, it was already moving in that direction, with the exception of a couple of New Zealand kind of swinging pitches that I remember. But you saw 2 scores of double centuries. You saw Gahl and Guptill score doubles in the last World Cup. I think you'll see a couple of those again here.
We'll see some doubles.
I imagine so. I think you'll see a couple of 400 plus and probably a couple of double centuries.
Think anyone will hit 500?
It's not impossible. The reason I'm not sure is that you don't have real potential whipping boys. Like a lot of the World Cups will have kind of like a Bermuda or Netherlands or something like that, which will really travel. Because there's only 10 teams, you are less likely to get absolute whipping boys within there. But you could well see, I think, Trent Bridge of 500.
I think if like an England plays at Trent Bridge and it just the stars align and every single batter comes
off. One team that can do it.
Yeah, I think the other one. Yeah. Whether that happens this World Cup or not is to be seen. Should be interesting. So, I mean, continuing, Kano, with...
Well, that's just the converse of, I guess, what we've just seen, is that it's become harder to actually bowl here. It's a lot of these grounds. Clearly, the runs per economy rate, let's call it, have deteriorated quite significantly. And as I said, you kind of now need to have a little bit more in your armory as an attack, than just sort of saying, well, we've got 4 seamers and a spinner. So the traditional off spinners are going to struggle, I think. The guys that can't sort of mix it up, take pace off the ball, whatever, are also probably going to struggle. So we can chat about the squads just now, but clearly if you've got a little bit more mystery, if you want to call it, in your attack, you're probably going to fare better. I still think they're going to be high scores regardless, but maybe tempered slightly by the fact that it's a World Cup and maybe there's a bit of more pressure, perhaps.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the makeup of the attacks are going to be really interesting. Are you going to certain teams like playing two spinners? England with Rashid and Ali, and India obviously play two spinners. Most will probably go with four seamers. Death bowling, I think, is going to be one of the keys in this World Cup. Who's got the best guys who can bowl under pressure at the death, and obviously Bumrah is probably the guy that stands out in that respect. But KG was also pretty impressive.
He was good in the IPL.
Yeah.
Who else is good at the death?
It's a good one.
Bumrah's
I think
definitely
Jafra
the best.
Archer might be quality for England potentially at the death. He could change it. He could actually change it for him completely, because I'm still not overly sold on their bowling lineup. But he could add a completely different dynamic, I think.
Yeah, look, Stark hasn't played a lot. He's obviously bowls a good Yorker, so it could be dangerous at the death.
Is Stark
as well.
fit?
They say he's fit. Aussies are saying he's fit. We'll see.
We say Staines fit. Who knows,
So, I mean, looking at this average scores, I mean, here we're looking at 300. Here, par at Trent Bridge is 350. That is just it's ridiculous.
Go to the next slide. You can see the sort of the law. So this is since the World Cup in 2015. This is since then. This is the games in England by ground, and these are the average scores batting first. So you can see Trent Bridge, excess of 300 on average. Rose Bowl 300, Headingley, pretty much all of them are in and around the 290 to 300. And as I said earlier, you can see their Lords and Old Trafford seem to be, or at least Old Trafford seems to be quite a tough place. And interestingly enough, that's where SA's last game will be versus Oz, and whether that will be a low scoring game.
So that will be a battle of the bowlers potentially.
Correct.
That should be interesting.
So fascinating. But I mean, those averages are scarily high. I don't think when you look at averages around the world, we tend to think of par scores as around 300 these days, but the average at a ground is much lower than that, because you get some of these blowout low games.
Sure.
So to be averaging 300 is mind-blowing compared to what you'll see around the rest of the world.
Yeah. So definitely batting friendly conditions in this World Cup. So let's look at all the different teams and how the different teams have fared.
This is quite a good point here. Is that since 2015 World Cup in English conditions, 62% of the games won have been by the fielding team. So therefore it is obviously a much better place to chase.
Interesting.
I guess it could just be that the pitches are good and you know what you need, so you can sort of plan. Whereas it's not like the side batting first is probably also scoring 350. It's just the side batting second it's a good pitch and they know exactly what they need.
Yeah.
We saw that in the recent Pakistan series.
Where
Great scores by scoring 350 and getting
They were the first team ever to score 350 three consecutive times, and they were the first team to score 350 three consecutive times and lose.
So this is important for the toss, because clearly, but there's actually, I don't know if we've got the chart here where we on the teams in terms of what they prefer to do. But clearly a team like India, England, they like to chase.
Yeah.
Okay,
so very good at it.
So far, toss is a huge factor. And if you win the toss, you bat second, you field first. That's
pretty much. I think the trend these days, almost worldwide, is moving in that direction. Certainly in T20, you saw in the IPLs, most teams chasing and winning.
It's a pity that it's not more balanced, because it's almost like you don't want a situation to arise where once the toss, you've seen this in Test cricket in certain places as well, where as soon as the toss comes down, you kind of know 60-70% of the time who's winning, and I guess the game is losing something from that.
Into ODIs, maybe.
Yeah, look, I think the only maybe balancing factor, as Kane mentioned earlier, is chasing in a World Cup. Is probably that added bit of pressure.
I mean, even in '99 World Cup, in 2013, SA chased against Oz. Even then, it wasn't a massive score, but they made it look pretty challenging to get. So I think in the World Cup, you don't want to be chasing like 300 plus in a semi.
Scary.
So that might change the way captains sort of think about it. Maybe in a semi, they say, I'd rather have runs on the board.
Perhaps. I don't think you get much. And maybe the ground to an extent, and I don't know if dew plays much of a factor there. A lot of them are day night,
Is it?
But I don't think there's much dew at this time of year.
It should be hot in theory.
When they interviewed the captains, they interviewed Kohli, and Kohli made an interesting point, and he said that, cool, it's all good and well that the average scores are 300, 350, whatever they may be, but he said in a World Cup, if you're getting a 280, a 290, he said that's equal to 30, 40, 50 runs in a normal game, just because of that added pressure. So I think that is interesting. I mean, going back to this graph over here, yes, it does benefit you to bat second. We've seen that in history in the last 4 years since the last World Cup in England. But I think what does balance it out somewhat is the fact that it's World Cup. It's a scary environment, high pressure environment, and maybe teams would be tempted to bat first just to set the score.
The other thing we must bear in mind with the sample is that while it's 58 matches, the most of it is obviously, I mean, one would consider that England have been very dominant there. So a lot of this is actually perhaps England winning, and they're just very good at chasing, or with a very power batting lineup. So it's a good stat, but it might not be sort of fully representative of all the teams, because
look, I think you can pretty much guarantee that India and England will choose to chase. But I think you can also guarantee that anyone playing India or England will also choose to chase. So, and that kind of takes out most of the games. So I think you'll find that 90% of captains winning the toss will chase.
So let's take this a step further, Kano, and let's look at
this one. So that's the next one where I think this is, so this is teams winning. So this is actually, this is not in English conditions. This is actually in general. That's not English conditions. That's just general team stats since the last World Cup. When they've been, or is this? I can't remember. Did you change the chart? But I assume this is the one I did, where basically just shows that a team like Pakistan actually is better when they chase, and when they bat first, they're the opposite. Whereas you can see Afghanistan on the other side of the table, where they're better batting first. You can see South Africa somewhere in the middle.
And look,
that makes sense. They're bowling's their strength back into defense.
And granted, look, they probably haven't played teams of as high a quality as the others, but this does make sense. They've got quality spinners on wearing pitches. Their strategy going into this World Cup, and there will be upsets, have no doubt about it. Their strategy, especially towards the end of the tournament when the pitches start to wear, if they bat first, they're a serious threat. People are definitely underrating Afghanistan. We saw them beat Pakistan the other day in a warm-up game.
And they've got great spinners.
They really do. And they might be one team where you kind of think twice about choosing to chase against.
And you can see there on the chart, England, India on the right there, definitely better at chasing than batting first. Or at least more of their wins come that way. Whether they, maybe they would be equally good, but this is just the way they seem to approach it if they win the toss.
Well, let's see. Let's look at the converse of this. When batting second, what actually happens? And like you said, Pakistan, surprisingly number one on top over there. And India, England are supposed to be expected. Sri Lanka are pretty much nowhere.
Australia and New Zealand, interestingly, sort of on the other side.
They struggle to chase.
Yeah, exactly. New Zealand look like only 40% when they.
I think Australia and New Zealand probably have had stronger bowling lineups of late, potentially batting slightly, or certainly in the Australia side, I think struggling to chase. England have just gone hard with their batting, so they kind of are chasing really well, and then India, probably between Kohli and Dhoni, have two best chasers stroke finishers of all time. So
I think now you add Hardik, Pandya in there, you've got three proper death.
Let's not forget Mahendra Singh Dhoni. Shame. So I mean, strategy to beat the Englands and Indias is essentially to win the toss and bat second.
Yes.
Field first.
And hope.
Thing is, if you put England in, I mean, it's not like they're not going to score. They might score 400. So I kind of think of England as a bit of a RCB, in the sense that their batting is obviously their strong, but if they bat first, they've got to really pile on the runs. But,
look, they're quite a remarkable story in a sense. In that since 2015, they've completely kind of rebuilt their team.
In 2015, I was in Australia for longer than the English cricket side. They were atrocious, and they had to literally go. they said it was the best thing that could have happened because they had to strip everything and start from scratch. And your point earlier with, are these pitches designed for the English? I believe that the English infrastructure is strategically designed as such to benefit them. I don't think it's a coincidence. I also saw an interesting stat that every single World Cup, since I think it was 92, the average scores have increased by like 20, 30 runs. And, there's no reason why we shouldn't continue to see that trend. So definitely batting friendly. I agree with you guys. The strategy, I think bowlers are going to get hammered. I think anything under 6 and over, you're doing well. And I think that the teams with the best wrist spinners or mystery spinners, those are the teams that are going to do well.
And death bowlers, I think.
Yeah.
Like Bumrah is just golden.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be the difference in winning and losing.
They've got Chahal Yadav as wrist spinners, and then they've got Bumrah coming in at the death there, and he's vicious with the new ball as well. So
he's vicious both earlier, but at the death, I think there's such a big difference between all of it.
Yeah, he's definitely
he's just miles.
Look, I think the other thing is if you do have the ability to strike up front, that changes the whole game. You've seen most teams in these warm-up games, not that you take them too seriously, but they're getting off to really good starts, not losing a lot of wickets up front. Except Bolt got right into India, and you can, that changes the entire game. If you can have a bowler who can strike up front, that'll change it. Not easy because I don't think there'll be much movement or swing on offer, but if you do get a guy who starts kind of getting his tail up, that will make an enormous difference.
So cool. I mean, let's quickly talk about the format of this World Cup. It's a completely different format to something we've seen since 1992. So traditionally, it's in the past few World Cup editions, how it's worked is there's been 3 or 4 groups with, say, 4 teams per group, and they'll play in the top 2 from each of those groups, or wherever it may be. We'll go into the quarterfinals and then a semi-final. That's changed for this edition.
Yeah, so this is back to 92 World Cup format. Best 10 teams in the world. Everyone plays everyone, so they all play 9 games. And league format, log format, top 4 go through.
It depends
who semis and finals.
Yeah, it depends who you talk to. If you talk to like an associate nation, they're probably a bit pissed off. But for like purists out there, would prefer to see a strength on strength. You avoid seeing like the sort of really one-sided games. I mean, if we're saying that Afghanistan is probably the newest team on the block, they're going to be very competitive. If anything, Sri Lanka may be the worst, but there's no like absolutely awful team here, who's going to get absolutely smashed.
Yeah.
Maybe they will, but
which we've seen.
There's we've seen a lot of one-sided games. And it's great to see. What was his name? The guy that took the catch for Bermuda. You remember the flying
the big guy.
Yeah, I mean it's great to see that stuff, and it's golden stuff. But for this World Cup, I'm quite excited to see
every game
is going to be
it's competitive.
And
I think it also, in previous editions, the World Cup groups are designed where you are in the standings at that particular time, and then that could change closer to the World Cup. So you could be in a group that you are against the top 2 favourites, and it's a little bit unfair. Whereas another team in another group has a much easier road. This basically equalises absolutely
The other
anything.
thing is it takes out things like a game gets rained out. You saw a lot of that in the Champions Trophy, where I think the Aussies had 2 results and they were out losing 1 game. Over 9 games, there's no excuses.
I think it's consistency now.
The best team, the best 4 teams.
You're not going to win by just having one good game.
Cream will rise. Something interesting that I read, I don't know if you guys knew, is that they're introducing super overs into this World Cup for the first time.
Oh, so if there's a tie.
But only in the semi. So log points, you'll get a shared point, but they're introducing super overs.
That's awesome.
Into the semis.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Would have been nice in 99.
That would have been fucking awesome in 99. So yeah, it is the best format. The only way I could think of making this format slightly better would be, I love the IPL format, where the top 2 teams will play in a playoff game, and if you lose that game, you will go into
eliminated.
And the 3rd and 4th team will basically play each other.
What it does is it gives the team that ends top full credit.
And I like that. It extends the tournament as well, which is always a good thing. Extra games, and it does. It's it's a little bit harsh that a team doesn't lose a group game. They finish on top and they have one off day in a semi-final. It's a little bit, it's a shit one.
South Africa.
Yeah, I was close about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, you can't complain. I mean, it is a knockout competition at the end of the day.
I've never been more excited actually for a World Cup.
It's a great format.
Cool. Let's go into the teams, guys. Each and every single team. Let's do a quick analysis on each team. This is just a cool little chart that we found, just looking at the team's experience. So, look, this may have changed slightly, just for the viewers to understand. There were slight changes in certain squads, but I don't think it's changed things too dramatically. India is exceptionally experienced. I think that's obviously a factor of how much cricket they actually are playing.
Yeah, exactly.
Surprisingly, Bangladesh, the second most experienced squad in the World Cup. I was a bit surprised by that.
Shakib, he's probably got like 300 caps. And
Tamim's
been around since 07, I think.
Yeah. And I think I read Murtaza, he was in the 99 World Cup.
Really?
Yeah, there's him and Chris Gale, I think, were the only guys that was in.
Shoaib Malik?
Still represent. Shoaib Malik was in 99.
Was he in 99? Definitely.
I think so, yeah.
Interesting.
He's in his late 30s, so it's very possible.
So there's those three guys that played in the 99 World Cup. Pretty awesome. Cool. Let's go into the betting and the odds that the bookies are giving for this World Cup. Obviously, England, heavy favourites, completely understandable. Their form has been ridiculous of late. India also up there. Australia, look, it's an interesting one because their form of late in the past year or so has been atrocious. Look, in the past couple of months, they've really turned it around.
I'd rather say their form since the last World Cup has been horrific.
Yeah.
And then you take the last sort of maybe 6 months and suddenly that win versus India must have given them huge confidence.
Coming from 2-0 down to winning 3-2 in India.
Exactly. Pakistan.
Without Warner, without Smith, without Starker, I think.
I think something that's important to say is that their form, even with Warner, Smith and Stark, was atrocious. It's not like it was because they were without them that their form was really bad. They had a really bad couple of years in one-day cricket, even with a full-strength team.
South Africa whitewashed them in South Africa.
Whitewashed them. They missed a couple of their bowlers, but
they didn't bring the bowlers.
But they had a full-strength batting team. They've borne the brunt of a couple of whitewashes, I think, over the last couple of years.
Do you guys think that they're 4.75 to 1? Do you think that's a factor taken into consideration in these bookie betting odds? Is the fact that they are World Cup machines? They've lost something like 4 matches in their last 3 World Cups or something like that.
It's
3 in the last 4.
Sure. If they didn't beat India in that last series, I don't think the belief wouldn't be there.
Look, I
think
some
form now.
I think if you were to kind of show the world rankings next to this, it's not. Australia are out of line with their ranking. Their odds are much shorter than their kind of ranking suggests.
Sure.
So there's clearly a World Cup factor that comes into the bookies' minds. I guess rightly so. It's hard to argue.
And I mean, looking at South Africa, we 10-1. Which, if I think about it, we are obviously going in as underdogs. We're not being talked about as favourites, which I love, by the way. But it doesn't feel like we're 10-1. And maybe a factor, like we said, is because we've struggled in World Cups in the past. Is that really such a big deal? If you look at teams that have won World Cups, the only ones that haven't won it more than once that have won it are Sri Lanka and Pakistan. Everyone else that has won a World Cup has won a World Cup at least one more time. So West Indies have won it twice, Australia 4 times, India twice. So everyone that's won a World Cup has won a World Cup again, whereas only 2 teams that have won a World Cup haven't won it again. So maybe it is a factor.
Okay, well, I guess we perennial chokers, but I mean, who of this team, I guess, was even involved in the last one? Seems to be quite a...
I think there were about
Quinny, Hash.
Quinny, Hash, Faf.
Okay, so there is some
remnants
of
about 6 or 7 stages.
So there's still
here.
Yeah. So if I was thinking of from your angle, then you could easily make that argument that there's still enough memories in there that are.
But then every team has memories. Every team,
yeah.
So I actually think South Africa are good odds. That's my personal opinion.
So.
I think that the format suits us. I think we tend to be relatively consistent over long periods of time. And once you can get to the semis,
that's a good point.
once you can get to the semis, so that's why I back us to get to the top 4 in this type of format. Once you get to the semis,
anything can happen.
I'd like 10-1 for a team to win 2 games.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
See, agreed. Okay, awesome. And look, just to briefly go through the rest, Afghanistan are, according to the bookies, the lowest. I don't agree with that. I think there's teams, we'll discuss them, that are far, far worse off than in Afghanistan. Anyway, let's move on to the squad analysis. So this is cool. Like, what they did was they took the combined all-time squads and they looked at how many games have they played, experience, bowling average, batting average. We're not going to go into too much detail here. Gareth, talk to us briefly about Australia, pros and cons quickly.
Yeah, look, I think the Aussies, clearly they're peaking at the right time. They haven't, as we said, haven't been great going into kind of the last 4 years, but Smith and Warner back is a huge factor. They seem to have good balance. I think their biggest weakness is their spinner. For me, Lyon and Zampa are probably two of the weakest spinners around.
In one day,
So I think that's probably a weakness. But they'll always be there and thereabouts. I think there's no doubt about it.
They seem to be a really well-balanced side. They've got depth in batting, some depth in their bowling as well. Always a threat. Talk to us about Sri Lanka, Kano.
Sri Lanka, it's hard to really say much. To be honest, to say that balance would be, I wouldn't even know. I mean, this team has sort of got no form whatsoever. I was having a look since the last World Cup, they've won about 20 games out of 85. So, and this is a team which seems to have a little bit of politics going around it, maybe not picking their best players. I don't know. But, to not have a guy like Dick Weller, which I thought, as I said, he's a bit of a poor man's Quinny, but he's got something, and I think that to leave a guy like that out, obviously there's something wrong in the system there. I think
players to look out for.
Malinga is, Malinga did well in the IPL, but he's good for a few overs. I'm not sure 10 overs from Malinga is actually going to be that good.
He'll be very expensive.
I think he could be. I mean, he's obviously still got it at the death, maybe.
You've got to mention the bloke who killed us in that Test match, Pereira.
Pereira.
He's obviously dangerous.
Yeah, they've got a couple of guys that can on their day, but I'm not sure they can do it for.
And Matthews also. It's good to see him back in the squad.
Yeah, but I mean, Kane mentioned politics. Karunaratne played against Scotland last week. That was his first one-day international since 2015.
And nice captain.
And he's now captain. It's completely bizarre. That can't happen in any other country.
Pakistan, always the surprise package in a World Cup. Also seems, it's funny, Mickey Arthur was quoted about a year ago when he talked about what's the guy that Wahab Riaz talked about how he doesn't think he's going to make his way back into the squad. And he said, when was the last time he won us a game? And he'd rather give these youngsters an opportunity. And a year down the line, literally cut off for the World Cup, they make last minute changes.
He didn't even play in the English series.
No. I mean, they got rid of Junaid Khan. They've got some decent bowlers. They've got Baba Azam is something special.
He's could be my favorite batsman in the world. He's so good. Yeah, he's just
quality
to watch. He's unbelievable.
He's going to be an absolute superstar. There's no doubt about it. They've probably got, not a lot of people know this, but they've probably got the best top 3 in the world. You tend to think of India's top 3, South Africa's top 3.
It's a good point.
Australia's, but Imam ul Haq, Fakhar Zaman, Babar Azam are statistically absolute beasts. They're averaging in the 50s and 60s in one-day cricket over a fairly long period of time. And then guys like Safraz are useful.
I think their downfall lately is bowling, where as you saw, they couldn't defend 350, 360.
Look, they've got.
I don't know if they're picking their best player. I don't know.
The legs Khan.
Shut up, Khan.
He's a really good limited overs bowler. So they've got the legs.
I think they're competitive, but
they also won the Champions Trophy in England.
They lost to Afghanistan. They'll probably win the World Cup, and it's just like so typically.
My view is that actually the format doesn't suit them.
Correct.
Where it suits South Africa. They tend to be a
West
little bit
Indies
inconsistent.
Exactly.
But in a long format, probably use it slightly against them.
Good point. So we don't have those exact stats for West Indies, but West Indies is an interesting one to talk about because there's so much excitement. They've drafted in all these players from the IPL, and the West Indies are so dominant in the IPL, and there seems to be this very big excitement about West Indies ODI cricket at the moment, and I can't say I'm sold. I think that in a T20 short World Cup or a shorter format, they are explosive, they are dangerous. I don't see them being able to sustain that over a longer period of time. Would you agree?
Completely. I think 50 overs is too long for them. I think you don't want to catch them on a day where there's rain and you have to play them in a shortened game. But they've clearly got exciting players. Guys like Shah Hope, I saw his number 3 or 4 in the world. Hetmeyer.
So I would say Shah Hope is the exception to the explosiveness with the rest of the squad. He seems like the one guy that can bat through an innings, whereas the other guys are good for 30, 40 balls maximum. If we're looking at Chris Gale, he's Russell, Hetmeyer, explosive, really good T20 players.
Evan Lewis. I think they've got match winners.
They do have match winners, and they'll probably on their day they'll beat you.
Correct. But whether they can do it for 9 games,
I can't see them being semi-final contenders. I think they're lacking a spinner. They're left in the round now.
It's true. They don't have a spinner.
They're very weak in the spinner part.
I think it's Nurse. He's been.
And the fast bowlers in ODI cricket don't have great records.
I think on flat decks they're going to travel.
I'd have to. Which might suit their style of batting, because if 2-3 of these guys come off for a period of time, I think you don't want to be in a position where you're trying to defend 50 of the last 30 balls, where they've got
kill the game. For these guys.
You've got to kill it off. You can't give them a sniff, because that's what they want.
I'd put them in the Pakistan category. They're going to cause a couple of upsets. They're going to be there and about, but probably not a semi-final contender.
South Africa, the Proteas. So interestingly enough, so Pakistan have the highest batting average on average out of all of these teams. South Africa have the lowest bowling average of all the averages of these teams. South Africa, in my mind, has by far the best bowling attack in this World Cup, like hands down, I'll say.
If they fit, I think that's true. I think and depending on what team makeup they go with, but assuming they go Steyn, KG, and Ngidi, Tahir, those are 4 world-class bowlers.
And I mean, not many people mention him, but Pelokwayo, interestingly enough, has a better strike rate than Tahir, Rabada, and Dale Steyn. So a really big wicket taker.
I think it also depends what kind of bowlers you want. I mean, if you've got Steyn, Rabada, and Ngidi, Tahir, you don't really need another strike bowler, maybe.
I agree.
You could have a more holding bowler like a Pretorius. Then again, some may argue Pretorius could travel. His pace, if he's not doing enough with it. My worry is completely on the fitness. I agree with you, hands down, there can't be a much better attack. But I'm just worried. I mean, we made the point, this could favour us, the format, but maybe it goes against us because we can't keep fit for 9 games. That's
also
my worry.
we have the highest average age in the World Cup.
Do we?
It's quite interesting.
Wow. So here
helps us.
He's at 40, eh?
Well, I guess Steyn is in the mid-30s. Mid-30s.
Hash.
Doomini's mid-30s,
Okay.
The end of an era, perhaps. What about the batting? I think, given all those stats on the grounds and the conditions, it's probably bowlers that probably win you this World Cup.
So this is a good
that's why I think
discussion.
it's a good. We have that there with us, but I'm just worried about fitness and So we can talk about predictions later, but I think it's could hurt us.
Look, it's an interesting discussion. We can talk on it briefly. Do you think a batting team's going to win you the World Cup, or do you think a bowling team's going to win you the World Cup?
Look, if you score 500, it's not many bowling teams are going to be able to. I don't know.
It's hard to say. I think at the end of the day, probably I'd rather have a stronger bowling team in a batting friendly World Cup.
Correct.
You've got to have good batters, but
you got to. It goes without saying.
Top 6 has got to get the runs. But I think if you've got better bowlers,
where most teams might be chasing, let's say 320, we would be chasing 280. Let's call it. And yes, we don't have the best batsmen, but do we have batsmen to chase 280 on those flat wickets against teams with relatively bad bowling attacks? I think so. I think the strategy works in our favour.
Look, I think we've got to approach our batting slightly more conservatively than like in England, for example, where we're going to probably have quite a long tail. So having like a guy like Cash to anchor the innings, I think is crucial to.
And Rassi is like a mid-order.
I guess can play that as well. So we've got guys who can kind of play those roles, but we can't go hell for leather kind of up front.
Because if we 5 down, we've got Pelukwayo running to the crease. If England's 5 down, I mean they've got with 7 first-class centuries coming in. So cool. Let's move on to England. Let's briefly chat about them. So England are the batting machines of the World Cup. Their form's been extraordinary of late. I think we've got some stats. This was a cool graph that we saw recently. It's actually changed because of the Pakistan series. Most consecutive wins while chasing at home, England, it's now at 16. So they, more than any other side, are, especially in England, you almost have to win the toss and get them to bat first. And I think that's the best strategy to beat them.
They're favourites. They're number 1 in the world. They're playing at home. They're in blistering form. They're playing in conditions that they know. They are the team to beat. There's no doubt about it. But they're under massive pressure. If things stop, if they lose 1 or 2 games and they play us first, they play South Africa first, it can turn very quickly. The press can get on their back.
Their cricket is very brave or
it's
aggressive.
Cavalier, right? Yeah.
It's actually not brave, it's aggressive, and you could easily be down. Like I know you say there's a guy coming in at 7 who's got centuries, but you don't want to be like 50 for 5 down. Because they don't have the bowlers, in my opinion, that are really going to peg you back. So I think they're clearly favourites and the conditions suit them, but if they have an off day, which could happen, and it's more likely to happen to a team that's more aggressive, I would imagine. So it could be in a semi, and that's
exactly
where they could fall down.
Look, I think Archer was a massive thing for them.
Huge.
I think he's going to be a star of this World Cup. He's a superb bowler. He's not. He's a smart bowler as well as being a quick bowler. He's got a lot of variety.
And he can bat. He's a shooter.
He will be there. For me, I've said it. I don't say he's their best player necessarily, but I think he's their most important player at this World Cup because they've got a lot of batsmen.
Yeah.
What about New Zealand, guys? Always go in as kind of underdogs. They reached the final in the last World Cup. They're a great team. They've got some quality players.
I like them.
They're likable.
I like them, and I think they could make the semis. I don't think there's much in it between outside of England and India, to be honest. I mean, there's not much in it between the teams. But if I was picking, I think New Zealand would have a good chance. I think they've got, in batting with Williamson and Taylor, I mean, they've been unbelievable the last few years. So they've got a great middle order there, top to middle order. And on the right conditions, and I guess that's the thing, if the conditions are pretty bowler unfriendly, then I guess you can't really make this argument. But you saw Bolt the other day. You just need something in there, and he can have you down 3 wickets quite quickly. And there was a stat, I don't know if we've got it, I don't think we've got it, where he's taken, I think he's the second highest wicket taker since the World Cup. Bolt, in one-day cricket. I mean, he's actually, and his average, I think it was 107 wickets in 54 matches, which is
to a
game is world class in one-day cricket. And their balance will also come into play, because I don't think Savi's actually a starter at the moment. But they've got some handy, useful guys coming in, which might work against you if they're not already specialists. like a Colin Home. He's not overly impressive, but
on his day, I suppose.
Yeah, but
look, I think their strengths definitely. They've got great players. I just don't know if they have enough squad depth. So
no, definitely.
You've got
lose a player or
Guptill opening, Guptill's quality. You've got Williamson, Taylor, one of the best in the world. You've got Bolt. They don't really have a world class spinner.
They don't.
Look, Sampa's not bad. They got Ish Sodhi.
Okay.
I like their bowlers.
They got that quick.
I like their bowlers.
Lockie Ferguson, who's bowls really quick.
We could travel in.
Could travel miles.
I think we will travel.
Probably will.
My favourite actually is Matt Henry. I really like him.
Also, he's in the squad,
right? I think he's in the squad. He should be. Yeah, he is. He's got proper pace, and he's not as one-dimensional as Ferguson, who's to me just bang it in. He could easily travel. But I think they're going to be there in and around. I mean, I'm pretty sure they'll be contending.
Okay, cool. And let's just talk about Bangladesh really quickly. So Bangladesh, over the years, have developed this really bad reputation, but actually since the last World Cup, they've been pretty decent.
Look, they have, and then I think in the last maybe year or two, they've probably gone a bit backwards in one-day cricket. I don't expect them to. They'll win a game or two, but I don't expect much from
I think between
Bangladesh.
them, I think Afghanistan could beat them. I think
so too.
I think they'll probably beat Sri Lanka, but I think their real games are Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, and West Indies maybe.
And Pakistan, I think they could
Yeah,
beat.
it's true.
Yeah.
Look, players to look out for. Timing at the top has been really good of late, especially.
Yeah.
Spinners.
Shakib's obviously.
Yeah.
Shakib.
The
superb.
thing with
all-rounder.
Shakib is he hasn't had form of late. He didn't play IPL, so I'm not
He's
sure
injured,
how
I think.
rusty. Yeah, he could be a bit rusty.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't expect him to be up there.
Mushfiqur,
Yeah.
always a reliable
You see,
batsman.
they tend to be really good in low, slow conditions.
Yeah.
On flat decks, I just don't see them being that competitive.
Yeah. And lastly, we've got India over here, wealth of experience, wealth of runs, wealth of centuries, beast top order, beast bowling lineup. Probably the only weakness is who the hell bats in number 4 for them. That's probably the only box they haven't ticked going into this World Cup.
For me, I think they're probably the best balanced team in this World Cup.
Agreed.
I think they've got a bit of everything. They've got unbelievable top order. They've got finishers like Hardik and Dhoni. They've got unbelievable spinners in Chahal and Kuldeep and Jadeja, and then Bumrah, Shami, Bhuvi. Just an incredibly well-balanced team. They field well. I think they're going to be right up near the top.
Yeah, I agree. And especially if they're chasing. Cool. So in ODIs since the last World Cup, just to reiterate, I guess we've already made these points. So England have by far been the best. India. So this is what shocks me. South Africa have been third. They haven't been atrocious. They're 60-odd%. Yet people aren't talking about them.
Yeah, it is quite strange. If you look at most pundits, I don't think I've seen anyone tip us, which is maybe a good thing. We're flying a little bit under the radar. I think there's a view that maybe our bowling attack is good, but crocked. Our batting lineup outside of Quinny and Faf maybe doesn't have form. You can argue. I mean, Markram's in form, but not necessarily in the right format. Like, been playing domestic. Hash has been, there's a view that Hash is dreadful out of form, but he's not really, is he? I mean, he got 100.
Few games ago.
I mean,
Average is 50.
over
50 this year.
expectations are really high, unfortunately.
I think
for me, the key two batsmen who need to find some form would be Miller and if Dubney plays. Those two in the middle order. I don't think anyone's giving them too much chance. Let's be honest.
Yeah, look, I have a feeling we're not being spoken about because AB's not there.
Yeah.
I think like the lack of that kind of massive superstar in the team is why you get like a lot of the pundits probably not talking about South Africa, but I don't think it means we don't have a chance. I think the team is strong. I think for me, our biggest weakness is probably the lack of real quality all-rounders. Petroquire, Pretorius have been okay, but we don't have anywhere near the all-rounders we've been blessed with in the past, and I think that means that our balance is slightly off. Or we're either kind of going to have to play 2 all-rounders and be weak in the bowling or have a long tail. So we're always going to be balancing, I think, with how you kind of make up that team. But I think very, very competitive.
Sri Lanka, totally terrible. I mean, I think that they could potentially be the lowest. They could finish the lowest in the whole competition. I think they'll finish lower than Afghanistan. I bet on that.
I'd agree. I'd agree if I were to have a bet on
who are,
wooden spoon.
Afghanistan are going to make some upsets. So who are they? Sri Lanka, I would put money on.
I think they could beat West Indies. I think they can beat Bangladesh.
I
beat Pakistan.
I predict that they'll beat a top team as well.
I also
not
think
only
so.
one of the. I don't know who it will be, and I hope it's not us.
I'd love it to be England.
But on their day,
in 07 we lost to Bangladesh.
So every World Cup there's an upset. Ireland beats England. Bangladesh are beaten. They always upset. Bangladesh beat England. Bangladesh beat us. Bangladesh beat Pakistan.
Zim caused a few upsets.
Zim beat us.
99.
It's guaranteed in every World Cup there's a minnow upsetting someone.
No,
So
Bangladesh
Kenya once beats India.
That's right.
Kenya made
Kenya made the
semis.
Super Sixes or something.
Super
Semis
Sixes.
was it? Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but Afghanistan they'll beat those lower teams,
Yeah.
I think, but they'll also beat a big team. I don't know which one.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So look, kind of just to finish off, one of the things that, is always talked about in a World Cup is the C word, the choker word. And South Africa, for whatever reason, have been given that, labeled as that C word. And I personally don't feel that it's right. I think that if it has happened, it's happened once, where it's really been a choke, where in 99, where we really should have won that game. But besides for that, I don't think that it's right that South Africa are the ones that are the real chokers of world cricket. And I found this really cool video where they talk about another team that is maybe the choker of world cricket. Let's have a look.
Records are made to be broken. All records? All records. Trust me, there are some records that you don't want to break. Like what? Like England losing in the final of every type of World Cup and Champions Trophy in the men's game. In 1979, the Windies beat them at Lord's. Chasing 287 in 60 overs, England lost 8 wickets for 11 runs. 5 Englishmen scored ducks. In 1987, they lost to Australia at Eden Gardens. Chasing 254, England were 135 for 2 when Mike Gatting attempted his infamous reverse sweep against Alan Border, which cost them the match. And they also bottled the 1992 World Cup final against Pakistan, thanks to Imran Khan and Wasim Akram. Imran scored a match-winning 72, and Wasim clean bowled Alan Lamb for 31, and Chris Lewis for a duck, with 2 unplayable deliveries. That level of bottling only comes with practice. England have had plenty of that. They've lost 2 Champions Trophy finals, to the West Indies in 2004 and India in 2013. In 2004, England scored 217 and had the Windies in trouble at 147 for 8 in the 34th over. But Courtney Brown and Ian Bradshaw held firm and scored the 71 runs needed for victory. In 2013, England were chasing just 130 in 20 overs, but collapsed from 110 for 5 to 113 for 8 thanks to India's bowlers. They lost by 6 runs. But the best was in 2016 when the West Indies needed 19 of 6 balls to beat England in the T20 World Cup final. Carlos Braithwaite didn't even need the whole over. He hit the first 4 balls for 6. Poor old Ben Stokes. Does England share this record with any other team? No, it's all theirs. And with the World Test Championship coming up, this beauty of a record can still be expanded. You know, like a collection of fine wines.
Cool. So, I just found that really interesting that South Africa are labelled as the chokers of world cricket. But I guess it depends how you define choker. And if the world's definition of choker is you get to a semi-final or final and not win, which seems to be the connotation around South African cricket, well, I think that's a little bit unjustified and a little bit unfair. And if that is the label the definition we're going to give it, then there's no doubt that England are the chokers of world cricket. Would you agree with that? Do you think that's unfair?
I hate the word choker.
Me too.
I think it's used completely out of context 9 times out of 10. But
What is your definition?
I think choking is when you're in a position where you should win 99 times out of 100, and due to pressure, you don't execute and you lose. I think just losing to a team in a semi-final because they played better than you is not a choke.
I agree.
If we choked in 99.
Yes.
That was a choke.
Yeah.
Did we choke in 96? We didn't choke. We just got blown away by Lara.
92 we didn't choke.
92 we didn't choke. 2003 we screwed up on duck.
That's not choking.
Using stuff up.
Yeah.
2007 I
Got blown away by
Blown away by
Aussies.
McGraw, yeah.
2011
New Zealand in the semi-final. Should we have won the game?
That
We were,
15, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
it wasn't a
We had a couple of
choke.
drop catches.
New Zealand on the day was
I
fantastic.
think the point is you could probably analyze every single team
Yeah.
and find these examples.
Yes.
You know, we've just somehow got that tag,
And it's
and we'll never get rid of it
I also
until we win.
I also
Until we
think
win.
because sometimes you take it as a compliment that we're well regarded.
Yeah.
That we should be doing better. Right?
Yeah.
We should have won a World Cup by now.
Yeah, yeah.
So I like your definition. I don't think it should be you make a semi-final or a final and you lose and therefore you're a choker. I think it's like you said, you're in a position where you should not lose. You know, needing one run or 3 balls with Lance Klusener on strike, you should win that.
Yeah.
And you know, there are also instances where Stoke should have defended 18 off the last over. But instead go ahead for, you know, that they probably choked with your definition more than South Africa, losing tons of wickets for very few amounts of runs. So I don't think it's fair, and I think I agree with you that the term is so badly used in world cricket.
But let's get rid of it. Let's win a World Cup and it'll never be called it again.
It's like the All Blacks.
Exactly.
Once they won the first one, it was over.
Yeah.
Cool. Moving on. Next, okay, let's just talk about some predictions for this World Cup. Kano, who are your top 4 and your finalists, and who's your winner?
I'm going to win England.
Okay.
Final England, India. My top 4 will be those 2 plus Australia and New Zealand.
Okay.
And then top run scorer. I'm going Johnny Bairstow.
Interesting.
And wicket taker, Bumrah.
Nice. What about you, G?
I think I'd probably go India. I think best balanced team, and I'm hoping England choke again.
I hope they do.
I think India, England are shoo-ins for the top 4. Those are certainties in my mind. I think probably Oz will be good enough to be in the top 4, and I think South Africa are a really good bet for top 4 as well. So that would be my top 4.
So you went New Zealand?
I went New Zealand, yeah.
As
I said, I think it'll be I think both 3rd and 4th spot is going to be up tight. It's going to be tight.
3rd and 4th spot's tight. I don't think Australia are certainties.
No, they're not.
But I'm
Could
going
be Oz and New Zealand.
Oz and South Africa.
And
then top run scorer. As we saw, it's usually an opener. But I think if ever there's a player who's not an opener who'll be top run scorer, it's probably Kohli. So if I'm going to go for New Zealand to win it, I've got to go Kohli. Top run scorer, maybe Sharma, but I think Kohli. Top wicket taker. I think given his ability at the death, and he tends to pick up a lot of wickets at the death. I think Bumrah.
Wow.
But spinners will play a big role as well. So a spinner could easily be a top wicket taker.
Okay.
And what else? Wooden spoon.
Oh,
Wooden spoon.
Sri Lanka. It's my wooden spoon.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's between them and I think even Bangladesh. I could see Afghanistan flipping both of them.
Sure. I'm going to go.
Yeah, Sri Lanka.
I agree with your top 4. I think New Zealand doesn't have enough depth or strength in one department to take them to the top 4 in this kind of format. I do think Australia, I don't think they'll top the table, but I think they'll come 3rd or 4th. They are definitely beatable. Every team is beatable. England and India are the only ones you might have to rely on the toss. So I'd agree with your top 4. I think South Africa will be there under the radar, will get in there. Teams won't take us as seriously as they should. My top run scorer, I'm going to have to agree that it's either going to be a Warner or a Kohli. If I had to pick one, I'm going to take a guess and say it's going to be Warner. I just feel like he's mentally on another level, or he just doesn't care. One of the two. And top wicket taker, I'm going to go for a spinner. I'm going to take a big flyer and go with Kuldeep Yadav. And my wooden spoon, I'm going to put in Sri Lanka as well. I think they'll finish in last place. Cool, guys. We hope you've enjoyed that episode on the World Cup. It's only a couple days away. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. To end off the show, we always do end off with a trivia question. So this week's trivia question is, in this current World Cup squad, which players have had family members that have also played in World Cups? So I'll repeat the question. In this current World Cup, which players have had family members that have also played in World Cups in previous years? Awesome, gents. I've really enjoyed that episode. Thanks so much for coming through. I think that was really, really good. I think there's some really interesting stuff that came through there, especially thanks Kano regarding the conditions, Gareth in terms of which teams are looking as favourites. That was really enjoyable for me. Thanks so much for coming through, guys, and hope we can do it again soon.
Really looking forward to it. Going to be a fun 6 weeks.
Going to be a fun 6 weeks. And we will check you really, really soon. We hope you enjoy it. Check you next time.
Cheers.